Hey, hello. Welcome to my third devlog already. And the goal for this one is to really start working on the finishing and polishing of the environment, the world, the items, everything surrounding it. And obviously make it stable as well, right? So it's basically the finishing touches for the next couple of months till I can publish the prototype to a server and see how it performs under load. So first up was building out some environments. This is a kind of a secret mini cave I've been building out with a lot of monsters in here. It's kind of like a nice farming area if people can find it. Forgive me for the epileptic speeds that are going on here. I guess I've recorded too much with too little time to make this work. I'll probably need to start doing these things from a script in the future though, so it's a bit more organized. This is me building a little house in the town. There's some work on a dungeon happening here, where it's basically a lot of pre-made assets and kind of stitching them all together. In this case, I stitched the boss room together to the normal dungeon. You can see me testing everything here, which seems to work all right. Obviously, everything needs to be scaled. AI work, a lot of glitches and weird things. I want AI to not detect me when there's side lost. There's a lot of work being done here on items in the game. So basically all the items in the game are set up now. Same for the skills. Each of the items has now proper icons, which makes all the difference visually. It already starts looking a lot more proper and less prototypey. So this is a great change. In addition to this, I've improved the loot UI. It looks a lot cleaner, a lot more polished. There's some work on giving every skill their own animation, which I got from Mixamo. And also did some work on projectiles, which you can see here. In this case, there's a wand, and that's a projectile-based attack. So it does its attack, but there's like a particle effect floating from one space to the other. And kind of simple. It's just the explosive particle flying around, but it does show how this can work for like wands, but also projectile skills, like anything with that, as a specific player to enemy damage animation, and also bow and arrow, right? So yeah, that's the work done here. I think it's fun to do a little bit of a deep dive here in the way I've set up all the items in the game and the way I've set it up to make it work generically. So let's do a bit of a deep dive here. Since as part of the last changes, I was making all the items, all the spells and the skills I want to have in this prototype. All was a bit of a vague word. I'm sure I'm going to add a lot more, but kind of a rough starting point. I spent a lot of time working on my data tables, where I've put all my items and my skills. And the way I want to set it up is I kind of have some generic struct that kind of shows what an item is and could be. And it's kind of set up generically. And in a way where I still have some flexibility, but everything kind of does consolidate to a single structure. And the way I take this approach is it saves a lot of resources, because when a lot of things are more generic, it simplifies the logic, it optimizes the logic, and it makes it easier for designers, for me, to kind of make new items, right? Because it's kind of a thick structure. However, for skills, it's the same approach, but some skills are very unique, right? Not every skill is a damage skill, a healing skill, or a buffing skill. So there's some weird things, some weird and unique effects. So I also want to have the approach of offering some flexibility on this generic system. And I thought I set up something interesting, and I think it's interesting to show you as well the approach I take here. So what I did in the last couple of weeks is basically open up my data table, which is resolved. It's kind of like just think of it as a spreadsheet, but it's resolved around my custom structure here, an item structure. And basically it's set up in a way where I can use it as a row for a data table, and it's just a bunch of properties. But this technically is what an item is in the game. It all boils down to these properties. And the way I set an item up, let's take a look at a strong dagger for instance, is basically just fill in the properties. And as you can see, this data table approach, it's relatively easy to search for items, make some changes, add new items, and it's all in engine. It's a data file. It's also stored on the client machine, so there's no back and forth between server resources there. Clients can easily look up a property. It's I think a pretty neat system. It does mean everything here is hard-coded, so eventually this thing will probably be a few thousand lines long, but with the search feature, I think this is a good enough approach. An alternative I was thinking of is storing everything into the database. It makes for easy updates, changes without having to modify game files, but also it comes with its own set of problems, and I kind of like this approach. It's all in engine. Everything I modify here, like if I want a different icon, I can just search with all the engine game files, not a problem at all. Easy to change, easy to test. So I think this is an okay approach for now. Time will tell. But the way to make this work, like for instance, I took the sword here, for instance, it's basically just filling in properties. It has stuff like rarity, which then automatically changes, the icon border colors, value for shopping, selling, whatever. This is interesting. It's equip properties. Is this if it's a right hand or left hand, you can actually equip it there. Like if it's a chest thing, it automatically equips it to a chest. If it's just a utility item, a spell book, you just equipment slot becomes none. Interesting property here is I have several fixed weapon types, and based on those types, some skills are allowed or not allowed. For instance, I have a few sword skills or like melee skills, and only if those skills match the weapon type, you'll be able to execute those. For instance, bow, if this becomes a bow, you'll have access to bow skills and so on. There's a few other things like class requirements. Do I want this to be only for warriors or assassins? And like the mage shouldn't be able to wield a sword. That's an option. And this kind of makes things interesting, the stat window here, because this kind of makes it generic, but also some flexibility. The way I set it up is a lot of things in game are based around some specific stat, like strength, dexterity, but also damage, critical hit chance, health, movement speed, skill, health regen. And the way I set it up is this enum can be used for a lot of things. For instance, you can specify modifiers on this weapon. And in this case, I set it up that every weapon should have a min or max damage modifier and an attack speed, and then I can set those values. But for instance, I can also have this sword have an extra strength modifier, which allows me to, it gives you 5 strength when you equip it, just like this. So you have some leeway to play with here. And similarly for requirements, it's the same approach. If I want this thing to have a strength requirement of 25, there we go. But maybe I want this thing to have an armor requirement, which is kind of weird, but technically this is what you could do with the system. You can even have a min damage requirement. It's kind of odd, but it does allow for this. So only if your minimum damage is 25, you're allowed to wield this weapon. Well, since this is a basic sword, this is like your starting item, I'm not going to give this any requirement. Well, a few other things, there's some things, if you right click an item, it can do some property, like there's a ring, I believe. If I can find it, it's probably easier to just look here for the finger. Here you go. Wedding ring, saint's band. I remember one of them had a unused property. Maybe I haven't added it yet. Okay, but my goal for this thing is that one of these rings you can deal damage to a target once every minute. It's kind of like an extra damage thing. Few other things to make it generic, but also make it work. For instance, like potions. Here, if you use a potion, there's a description. It's stackable, no cooldown, but if you use it, there's some things happen to health, mana, or XP. This is kind of non-generic, so maybe there's some ways to consolidate this into a generic property as well, but these are some options I take. For instance, if you click it, you can specify a buff ID, which is the ID of one of the skills or spells, and then it will actually apply it. Yeah, there's some things like effects, but I think these are right now deprecated because I'm using skills for everything. So that's items, and as you can see when I hit the game, right now I just made sure I have every single item in my inventory for testing, but you can kind of see how it works, right? This is the hot pants. It gives you 25 armor, attack speed, movement speed, but it requires 15 dexterity. Well, looking at my stats, I do have these available, so I can equip them, no problem. Here's other stuff like, there's a lot of other stuff here. But you can kind of see the approach I'm taking here. So, I set up all these skills, gave them all icons, gave them all a 3D mesh to sort of match them. For instance, there's the cloak, and now I have a cloak equipped. As you can see, there's a more warrior cloak, there we go. There's different items, you can do the hammer, Excalibur, different, let's see, chef's cleaver. That's kind of... Is it working? Oh, okay, I guess something broke there. But yeah, here, this is my mace. You can see it kind of working. I'll need to review all the items. So these are the items, and then there's also the skills. And the skills is the same approach, right? There's a massive struct here that I'm using for all the logic in the game, also for blueprint. And this thing is kind of the base layer for everything skill related. So again, generically set up. Here, let's take this ranged mage attack, item description, but stuff like, okay, can we move while casting this thing? Does it have a telegraph thing? I'll probably have more options for this later. Also stuff like damage. Is it a damage skill, a buff, a heal, or just, I'll get to the activation later. The way target, is it team-based, area-based, just only on yourself? Like, these are the generic things you can set up. And similar to the items is the requirement, right? I can specify a class. This is a good one. Can you use it with every item equipped, or can you only use it when you're, for example, equipping one or two-handed weapons? And then the game will check, okay, do you have one of these equipped? If so, you can cast this skill. Requirements, like it's the same approach. I think it makes sense. Mana cost. This one's interesting. Casting time, duration. Is it like, if it's a buff, how long does it do? Specific animation for casting. When during the animation does it actually trigger the logic for the skill? Well, cooldown makes sense. And this one is interesting. The activate. This kind of gives me the extra flexibility. What this does, it allows me to pass a specific blueprint that can do custom logic when the skill is cast. It's custom logic specific to the client and specific to the server. For instance, this one over here, the meteor shower. This is a good example, right? Because it's kind of like a skill that summons, spawns kind of an area where there's going to be meteors falling, and it does damage over time. And the generic system doesn't have this in there. It's only direct damage in a single target area or whatever. But this thing, how it's set up, it's when it activates, it spawns this s_meteors object, which is here a blueprint based on a custom C++ code called skill activate. And this thing gets spawned on the server and on the client when the skill activates. And the way it's set up is there is a blueprint skill event that happens only on the client and only on the server. And this allows me, or game level or game designer, to kind of set up their own unique skills. Like this right now, it's spawning a meteor shower, and on the client, what it's doing is actually spawning the visuals for the meteor. So all it does, it just spawns a few meteors, which in my case is just a sphere with a random texture, have them fall down with physics. And on the server, it runs this thing every second or so, which basically just checks, okay, are there any actors overlapping? Are they actually a base unit? Are they not friendly? If so, modify their health. And this way, it gives you kind of unique control. So most skills are generically set up, which saves a lot on work, on resources. And some unique skills require this approach, which I think is a good balance. Like for instance, you want to summon a pet, that could work with this activate thing, right? Like you could just have the server spawn an actor and then set its properties so it follows the player, stuff like that. So that seems to work for now. I think I can actually show you. I didn't really spend the time making this look gorgeous because it's prototype anyways, so don't worry about the visuals. Okay, so let's see. So technically, if I spam them over there, they haven't seen me yet. This should now spam a meteor shower, which you can see happening there. Like it's just spheres falling down. You can see there's damage number. Yeah. So yeah, that's the meteor skill. And of course, this can extend to anything. Like there's the fire field, a healing field. I still have to add those activate skills, or at least to set up the logic. But that's the approach, right? A few other interesting options. There is of course, there's the effects. Like, do you want to have a particle or sound effect on the location, on the targets? Does it have to be a projectile from you to the target? That kind of makes sense. This one is interesting because this is part of the generic approach. Let me take the bolt example again. It's a damage skill, and the way this one works is you set up the damage or healing based on, like, for example, if I make this a healing skill, here you can see now becomes min-max healing. There's kind of some conditional properties on the structure, which is pretty cool. Wait, let me just show you in case you find it interesting. I've set up some, you can specify edit conditions here. You can see it here. I only show the min and max damage on the data table row if the condition is that the type of this structure is the skill type damage. Otherwise it doesn't show it. And same for heal, right? And same for buff. Which is pretty cool. Okay, and the way this works is you specify a fixed and max damage, but if you want, you can add extra scale modifiers on top of this skill. And in this case, what I've set up is based on your intelligence skill, it scales the damage by 2. And I kind of roughly forget, I think it's like a percentual modifier on top of 100% based on your intelligence level. In this case, if your intelligence is 20, this becomes 40 because it's times 2, and then it adds like 40%, I think, or maybe 4 times as much. Well, doesn't matter too much, but this way you can kind of have stat scale with other properties. You can even have a skill on strength as well, or on armor if you want. So there's a lot of room for flexibility and for a lot of weird skills if you want to. And the cool thing about this is it even works for auto attacks, for the basic attack, because I want these to be a skill as well, so I can solve merge the logic for skills and auto attacks in the same way, so I don't have to have 2 separate systems. And the way it works for a basic attack, I set this property that it scales with weapon. It scales by 1, which means this weapon's damage is basically scaled or multiplied by the damage of your weapon. And because the damage of a basic attack is 1/1, it basically scales this damage by the damage of your weapon, meaning it directly does the damage of your weapon, which is kind of a neat little trick that I can also specify my basic attacks this way. This is an interesting one, right? For instance, because it's unarmed, it doesn't really scale with a weapon, but I've set up a lot of other properties where it could scale with, so it kind of still does average damage. Same for the wand. Wand has an extra property for intelligence because it's kind of a lower damage weapon, and bow is just a pure skill on weapon. But this is a cool way to add some extra customizability to these skills with damage and extra end game kind of layers that you can still boost some skills just by being having a lot of stats sort of to supply it. And one other thing is the buffs. If it's a buff type, you can specify modifier keys. So it's kind of similar to items. So in this case, it's a strength buff. It gives me 15 strength over a duration of, there we go, 600 seconds, so 10 minutes. And this way, I've set up my items, I've set up all my skills, and I basically at this point I have for the prototype a lot of cool skills. Like I'll need to add some visuals, make sure the sounds and particles match, and set up the descriptions requirements. But right now I have a whole array of a few cool buffs, a few cool attack types, heals. So kind of a way to give the mage, the warrior and assassin class for this prototype some fun skills to work towards. Right now everything is unlocked. I'll make sure it's unlockable by finding the specific items, or you can buy them in the store. One cool thing to show you is the wand here. It's because it's most of these skills are, some of them are aimed at melee. The moment I hit this, equip this thing, which is a ranged weapon, you can see some skills darken, some skills lighting up from here. See? Because the wand, I have more sword skills than wand skills. Right now I have the wand, it actually is its own basic attack, and it's projectile based, so you can see the moment I attack this, there's kind of like a little explosion particle flying towards it. Not too special, but it does allow for me to make these kind of skills, which includes bow skills actually, because for bow, the way I set it up, it's going to be the same like this, but it just lets an arrow fly from me to the target. So yeah, it's I feel like it can definitely be expanded. I can do a lot more things with this, but right now it seems to be fine. I'll probably keep expanding this system, keep expanding new features and items the more I feel like I need them. And if you think okay, this doesn't work, what about this property, you could use this, or this is a way to make it generic, definitely let me know. Because it seems to work fine for this prototype, but the moment I get into the real MMO I'd like to make, I'll probably be missing a lot of things. But I think I can make this system work for the actual game. It gives me enough flexibility to make really cool skills, but also keeps it very generic in a way where it's easy to work with. Yeah, I wanted to show you this because I think this is an important part of how I've designed and how I'm going to design the game. Okay, so that's it for this devlog. I'm trying to keep them short. I keep failing every single time. Apologies. I tend to try and over-explain things, but I feel like I'm getting better at this format. I'll do a bit better every time. Learn how to either record voice versus video. I'll figure it out soon enough. But thanks for watching. I'm pretty sure next devlog is gonna be pretty cool because right now I'm really at a point of polish, making the whole gameplay loop work, finish the whole thing. So next update, I expect the whole gameplay loop will be in. Most, if not all, bugs are fixed. And then it's actually really cool. And then probably a month after that, I will have stabilized all the network stuff and will have put it on Amazon for testing. So it's going to be an exciting few months now. All right, see you next time.